So yesterday we did a video with my dad and going through a different area of a buck I was trying to find. Now here, this is a buck I hunted a lot last year, put a lot of time into trying to find this deer. Honestly, I'm a little bit concerned that the deer might be dead, but this area, I've hunted it for a long time. There's always good deer that come back into place, and I've always struggled outside of the rut figuring kind of some things out here and trying to understand, where these deer are coming from, what they're doing, and maybe it comes down to a point where it's just like, oh, this is just, a rut spot. But it's pretty flat. It's flat country, not a lot of terrain. Yesterday we were in a lot of hilly terrain, easy to see some terrain funnels. This is a lot different, but some mixtures, some swamps, some cuts, new, old, some big timber, absolutely no oak trees. Yeah, so we're gonna try to break it down with the maps here and go in and see what we can find. So where I think we're gonna start out, Johnny, is we're gonna walk into that waypoint I sent you. Mm-hmm. That's one of my best scrapes, and a camera that I had this buck on all through October. And when I was in South Dakota hunting, he was, showing up on daylight, hitting the scrape about once a week. Yeah. And so I'm thinking he was in there, but I wasn't sure where he was coming from. You and I walked through the maps here.
I remember talking to you.
Yeah, you were talking about maybe him coming from back this road and everything. But I wanna get in here and really just break it down and kind of get some of your thoughts on it. Now, this is a place that humans definitely come through. So I'll show you where I have a camera. Normally I don't have one there right now, but back in this corner, and I do get a lot of really nice deer hitting this, but this is the only camera that I get people on. And along this edge is the only other place I've seen other people's cameras. Although I don't know if I've really ever seen anybody hunting in here when I've been here. Yeah, this strip of trees is something that we maybe should do a little walk through here in a minute, but this scrape right here was highly productive for me.
Wow.
And what I'd see is just about every day, does come out of here, and then in the morning they kind of come back and funnel their way back in. And then I would get bucks that would come through here too. In the summertime, I got a lot of velvet bucks on the scrape.
That's cool.
Yeah. And there's some, you see the little low-lying water there. They got a little bit of water that's around. Yep. They got some feed, some browse.
There's definitely a lot of browse here.
Definitely a lot of browse, but this spot was pretty good. I've never hunted, like hunting this scrape specifically or anything. I just couldn't. I was worried about people, and because I did have a bunch of guys coming through this walking down this trail, but but the camera info was showing me that they were still daylight walking through here. See this little opening here? 1 year after a bad winter, I found 7 sheds in it.
Get out of here.
Yep. And I'd found other years of sheds in this spot too, but since we've been having mild winters, I haven't picked one up in there.
And is there a lot of hemlocks in that low spot?
Yep, that's all hemlocks are there.
They're just laying in there, and
yep,
that little break in the terrain.
That finger of hemlocks there, definitely. Now a guy does run a camera right there on that tree pointing back on this trail, because in years past there were some good rubs coming out of here too, funneling their way out through. So they had cut it like 8 years ago and left a bunch. They just like cut all the understory out and sprayed it like 2 or 3 years ago, and then went in and just took a bunch of timber out of there just this winter. But when it was dropping black cherries in October, I didn't know this until after the season, but Hercules was coming out. He'd hit a scrape right here on this little edge that was hanging down, and then go out and feed there. And he did it a lot in the first week of the season in early October. And then during the rut, deer just would travel through here. This is one of my best. Like I saw 7 bucks in one day, kind of just coming off that corner, funneling up through here, running underneath my tree, and all these different spots. But that's
I mean, since it's been cut, what's the activity like? It looks like they can't really get through there now. Is it
no,
that thick, or are
it's
they in there?
they're on the outside edges. So I walked through that cut, and on the outside edges, they're definitely browsing. You can see the tops being browsed. That's where I found that big shed, was on the edge of that. Just like, you know, probably about this far off of it, but down around the corner on a bed that he was just sitting there, probably get up and go feed a little bit, go back and lay down.
And it was on this side of it, right in here.
Yep, just right down a little bit lower. Yep. Look at that rub right there, all twisted up on the ground right in front of you. Nope, right there.
Right here, yeah, yeah. There's another one. I like this little patch of thick stuff here, Beau, with all this open area here. You can see you got a rub here, and he's going right up underneath here. Let's just walk up.
A big deer does this.
Oh yeah, for sure.
Twisting that up, that beech tree.
Lead, you know, that runs between that cut and here, like I feel like a buck. I would get somewhere where I could see in these hemlocks. If I was to hunt this spot, yeah, look, this buck's, look at all these trees rubbed.
Yeah, he's hit.
There's a buck walking through here for sure. This is definitely, I really like this low spot.
Well, and the one thing, like I know a camera would tell us, you know, a little bit more info, but I like, so if you look at the predominant wind is, you know, northwest and westerly in November in this spot. So that's blowing this direction. And when you have that access trail that's over there, that the deer are used to people walking on it, it's only 80 yards that way. You come off of it and you come through all this thick cut where the deer probably aren't going to be in. Just figure out a way to get through there, mark your track on Spartan Forge so you can get through there quietly, and you can get right up on the edge and just climb up into a tree and not have to disturb all this stuff.
The deer are probably feeding out there like you said, and guys, there's that trail, so, and that scrapes there, this is downwind of everything over there. I could definitely see a buck.
Yeah.
If you sat here in a rut, you picked a tree, you can catch a buck just, but definitely you want to be in, he's going to be traveling right through here somewhere, you know.
Right through this seam.
Yeah, maybe you could get on that edge, but I think this is definitely a spot to run a camera, and like you said, if you can get a good access into here. But yeah, I like this little low spot here. Like every tree's rubbed here. Like this is bucks. You could sit here and kill a buck.
It's
if
one
you
of the,
sat here for 4 or 5 days, you'd kill a buck.
It's one of those things, Johnny, where like when you're in an area for so many years that there's certain things you don't pick up on or, you know, remember even. I ran a camera right there in 2015, and I had, well, one deer that had double main beams. He ended up getting killed that year in rifle season and stuff in November. I put the camera up. I found this spot in November, so it was a little bit late to start the camera, but they were sneaking up and like peering out into, like, you could see them like looking out into this cut.
Oh yeah.
Standing
I think, and like you said, and if you can get, like, it looks like this pinch you're saying, it kind of gets wider up here. So I would walk this drainage, and maybe you want to be on that inside corner. But I would just scout this area a little bit, and I would get on the edge of this and maybe figure on which is the predominant downwind area that the wind is going, and chances are there's no deer coming from that area. You know, you're going to have to give up something, but you know, maybe it's right, maybe right here somewhere, and get up high, let that wind just maybe carry across, because we're on a flat, you can get a pretty consistent wind. It's not like we're in any hills. You get up in this here to where this, maybe you see this little gap here, maybe you get up in the maple here and let that wind just carry the whole day out across there. You just sit here and just watch this spot.
That's a big rub on that tree.
Yeah, look at that. This is, especially if you can get something to funnel them, like if you look at this edge, how the branches are all from the tops, you know, you can kind of walk this edge and see where they might be crossing into there, and that you don't want your scent going down that trail. So you want to be in an area where maybe the branches are piled up a little more, you have like a nice wall that would protect your downwind side. Your wind would be going over that wall.
Yep.
Maybe the trails are over here somewhere, but let's just walk up here a little bit, maybe 200
Yeah.
yards, Beau, and then we'll go back down into that scrape.
Yeah, that works. So this bed that we had found here, we're in basically a seam, and this whole, all this stuff that we're doing here, it may look like we're walking a long ways, we're really not. It's all surrounded around one central clear cut and a community scrape that we haven't been to yet. But everything is in an area where it could be the same deer, it could be some other deer, but we're in one area and we're dissecting it. This is a place that I have a lot of experience in, but getting Johnny's perspective of breaking it down at a minuscule level. You know, it's one thing when you're first time going into an area, you're more just hitting quick points and trying to just learn a little, you know, a little bit, or trying to learn a lot in a little bit of time, which is difficult. But the more you start to hunt areas is when I really tend to start to really dissect those areas and break them down even more. So we're not moving very far. We're all, you know, that the main scrape we're going to get to is probably 300, 400 yards away from us at this point. And looking at these flat areas, we're really using the maps and looking for these edges and these seams, as Johnny calls them, that bucks would feel comfortable moving through. And this spot here is one of those places, and it's obvious by the amount of rubs here that a deer spends some time here.
He could be smelling this entrance road that everybody travels. He could be laying right here.
Yeah.
And just like smelling everybody, because all the danger is going to come in from here. And he could be just, so let's go up to where that little bump is up, and it looks like it's about 250 yards. Let's go up this drain.
Yeah. And I will say too, see those hemlocks that are sticking out there? I have marked doe bedding. I found doe beds underneath that right there.
I mean, he could, we would definitely call this a travel route, but he could actually be laying in this travel route, this low spot, catching, like I said, does just without even going in that open area. He can catch tracks and smell does, and from this little drainage, he can learn a lot, you know. And then even if thermals might even pull down in here in the evening.
Yeah.
Because we're going uphill a couple feet here and up on this side. So this is a low spot where scent's gonna linger, does are crossing, and he could learn all he needs to know about that spot, you know, by being here, whether it's the wind or the thermals or the does crossing. You have a little clump of hemlocks on the edge of this where a deer's gonna hit this and sneak under and look out, and there isn't a wall of brush on the edge of this cut for them to like, oh, I can't get out. So this is definitely a spot, if you were to hunt here, I wouldn't want my wind blowing down this way. So far, I like it down here.
Just back off of there, and yeah.
We'll go up another 80 yards or so, Beau, but yeah, I could see a deer just sneaking out here. That looks good for some bedding, Beau.
Yeah, right, these little...
And you got this trail coming out of these out of this drain.
Yeah, there's some little doe beds here. You know, it's like they can kind of work their way through here laying down. And I have, so that trail, see where you see those big trees there, the wall?
Yeah.
Right on this side of it's that walking trail.
Yeah.
When I'd come in the morning with my headlamp, there'd always be does right here.
Yeah, it seems
They
like
let me just walk right by. They'd be laying right down in here, and you could see them from the trail.
And you got a lot of daylight coming in here for browse, and
Yep.
these hemlocks can block the wind, and it's cooler getting under these hemlocks with all this sunlight. So this, yeah, that's a good doe bedding.
Yeah, not a place, you know, so what we had done is just keep walking up this seam here, and it's starting to get wider. And this is definitely looks like another place that they're kind of coming across, like we just found right there.
Yeah.
You know, kind of where they're going across. Not really probably a place of setting up, but knowing that does are living in here, that makes that even better, even during the rut too.
Yeah, especially in the evening if the stuff settles in that drain, that low spot. And even up in here, you have these spotty hemlocks for cover.
Mm-hmm.
To our left, it's really open. And this is probably where that buck you saw kind of came from. That was,
yeah.
He come from here, so I could see them coming across here to hit that drain back there.
Guess I
Oldie
missed
but a
this one.
goodie.
I've walked through here quite a few times before and never saw it. Nice. You were just saying these spotty hemlocks. You can see them laying in here. You want to walk out this?
Yeah. I'm gonna walk out here about 100 yards and go back.
So one thing I do when I'm going through big open clear cuts is you see a group of pine trees or hemlock trees, any sort of conifer trees, is just go look underneath them. Can't tell you how many times you find sheds underneath them. And just, you know, we talk about them for good areas as far as even hunting, but especially for bedding, when you look at all this stuff that's just kind of open and cut, when you find these places like that, deer can lay underneath it. They have, you know, they have shade, they have cover from the elements, and they can see underneath it. Just a good tip to go check them out.
It's possible he could lay right in here. And most people don't, you know, go into stuff like this, but if he would walk in here.
Right there's a bed right there, John.
And find himself laying, yeah. Find a spot, right here's a little bed. A smaller deer, but he's gonna go in here and lay down. Look over here by this hemlock, maybe that little high spot. That might have been a bed there, Beau.
Yeah.
I don't see a lot of hair, but maybe earlier in the year. Just a bunch of deadfall. Some of these hemlocks, they could be just milling around and lay down.
Well, this is one of those areas that they might not use the same bed. It's just this area you might, you know, plop down depending on visuals as the leaves. You know, think about how thick this looks when all these beech leaves are on.
Yeah, like early October. This is thick in here. You're right.
Yeah. So far we've found some really good sign and stuff, but nothing that's like, yes, this is 100%, this is it, you know, like we're dissecting it. We're almost doing it like you'd be shed hunting. We're gridding this, going back and forth, thinking that this deer could be laying in some of these areas, but there's nothing that's like, yes, that's it. Yeah. We don't have the no part of it yet. We have some good speculations, but we're trying to find those details that are just like, they jump out at you like, yes. And sometimes you don't necessarily find that, but we're gonna keep moving along, keep dissecting it, and just trying to understand it. And I think when you start breaking down areas like this, like Johnny is a perfect example of watching how he sees the woods differently, and seeing this little patch of shrub stuff here in this herbicide sprayed cut. You know, most people just walk past this and wouldn't think anything of it. And then Johnny looking at the maps, I think one of the biggest things we've learned so far is whenever I'm accessing from that trail, that's a problem. And I did last year, I recognized that, and I was parking back on a road over there and walking almost 2 miles in to skirt on the outside and hang my way in. But who knows, I could have even screwed it up early before I even recognized that and didn't, you know, I was thinking, oh, they're used to people coming on these trails and it's not really that big of a deal. But a big buck like that, he knows he's being hunted. He might not jump up and bust out, but he knows he's being hunted at that point.
It makes him harder to kill.
So
this is definitely a spot that it's a possible, especially when it's as flat as we got. It's just hard to find that smoking hot spot.
Yeah, and I mean, it's tough to find that one bed. Like, I think when you get in steeper hill country, you can find 1 or 2 beds and spots and be like, okay, he's laying here a bunch. I think in here, there's a lot of getting up and laying down.
Yeah, he could be here. If he's milling around, he could lay, there's a congestion of blowdowns and stuff. So he could jump in here and lay down, but that doesn't mean, you know, it's just kind of like this with these deer. But this might be, and it's always might, because there might be a spot that he's watching. You know, if you know he's here coming in, he might lay here, you know. But
yeah,
that low drainage and that pinch we're on that backside so far was probably.
Yeah, and if you notice, we haven't really like picked out, say, a lot of trees or anything. We don't know enough yet. It's just trying to understand more and get to know these things before being able to pick out the actual kill spots. I think that's one of our main things that we're missing at this point. And this is the scrape.
Yeah.
Well, both here. And I'd run my camera on that tree right there.
Yeah.
And this is where I'm getting them. Where I was hunting this in the, actually I want to ask you first before I tell you, if you were to look at this spot and the wind is blowing this direction, Okay, it's coming.
This way?
Yeah, blowing out this direction. What would you want to sit in a tree out in this timber? Or would you still want to try to sit back up against the wood line? What are your thoughts?
So if it's blowing up, kind of up the hill into this area, I'd be up here somewhere, Beau. Definitely, if you mean if you were just particularly hunting a scrape?
Yeah. And yeah. So what I was doing is, this is an inside corner, you know, of this cut, and I was hunting in that double cherry right back there. And this is where we had, I mean, we saw 10 bucks in 2 days that came through here. There was, in this little patch here, walking in on a rainy day, there was a 10 point with a doe bedded. We jumped him right next to the stand. In my new intro in the podcast, if you see where I turn around, I'm like, oh crap, you know, there's a buck right there. He was laying right there with a doe. And then the one I had passed on, he came out here, just circled, barely hit this opening, and then tucked right back into that timber, and then went back into that old cut.
I think with that, that's not a usual wind that you were hunting for this area. If it's blowing that way, it's like a southeast.
It was more southwest.
Southwest is kind of that way.
Yeah.
That is a little bit typical.
Yeah, southwest and west. So it'd either be this way or this way is how, when I was hunting that tree. One of the reasons why I originally was attracted to this is there's a lot of things that meet at one spot here. We have a herbicide spray cut corner. We have a cut that's just as old but not herbicide sprayed just over that way. You've got a swamp down here. You've got a 30-year-old or 35-year-old cut right back here. There's just a lot of things that meet at this location. And where I saw that really big buck when I was sitting in that tree was right back here, to right behind you, Johnny. He came right through that beech brush and worked up through there. And there was a train of bucks chasing a doe. He was one of them. And I grunted and called, and I called in the other bucks that were with him, but the big one didn't come in.
So it seems like they're wanting to stay in that thicker cover, huh?
So my thought, in the back side of this cut, so if you're looking at your map, down here is where I believe some bucks do bed. And I had a camera right in here. And in rifle season, the first day of rifle season at noon, I had a big buck sneaking out of here. Some people probably came through there and bumped him out. And I had, so that's why as we're going to head that direction, working back into this spot here and looking at it, it's difficult. I mean, I've struggled with kind of figuring out like the spot within the spot with it, but you know, I was hunting this on southwest westerly winds, so I could hunt out in this cut, and thinking that way, well, just say what you just said about, you know, as he's getting smarter and staying back into that cover after hunting pressure starts to come in, namely me, maybe it's like, you know, I'm hunting on north winds, but I'm finding a spot back in here downwind of this scrape. You know, he's cruising below it. He's, you know, he never really came out and checked it after that time. He might have been here, but just back in that cover there, and maybe I find a spot back in there downwind of it and hunt it from that way, to come in from a completely different direction, you know, and climb in on the backside of it.
I think, yeah, because from what you described, the deer have been here early October, and I'll guarantee there's probably nobody midday. This is a time frame that he knows nobody's out in the woods. He's going to come to me. This is an open area. He's comfortable coming hitting here. But as you get into the later parts of October, he knows he's moving around at night. He's smelling humans in the woods. He's been around for 5 years. He's going to stick to this cover. And like you said, when you get into the later part of October to November, you catch him in here. And I think it has to do with a lot of the hunting pressure that's in the area. He still needs to move and locate does, but he's going to stick to that cover and do it. He's not out of these older 5-6-year-old deer, not till like maybe the 10th, 12th, 14th of November, when he's like got that 1 or 2 days that he is out just running. But I think they don't lose their senses when, you know, humans are out there, and that's their predator, and that's our number one thing is survival. Though, yeah, maybe early season, like you said, your dad pointed out, like, you know, he's here early October. Maybe let's get in here and hunt him then, and maybe drop back in here. Let's go see if we can find an little open area or a trail.
And that leads into the swamp we want to go into there anyways.
It's got a ton of cover, and he can move cover a lot of ground in through here and be safe.
Yeah, let's do it.
If you take a deer a big old buck, October 7th, 8th, I could see him walking in this open because he knows no one's around. But you get into that later October when guys are hunting, he's smelling humans in the woods, not in your area, but just in general. And he might stick to this thicker area to move. Let's go check. You can see it's low.
Yeah.
Right through here.
Okay.
Let's check under.
Yeah, you lead the way.
This is a low spot that runs right up to that scrape. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
This may be the one he hits, like you said, end of October. You saw him, because you were right up there and you seen deer. And you got this blow down here. If you can see this dead log, this is going to funnel deer to some degree. And that's getting up into the open area, but I think we should go around each side. And he could maybe visually see from here, Beau. He could see up to your scrape.
Yeah.
He could visually look, then maybe come out if he wanted to, or I like this. You got a lot of cover around this scrape.
Yeah.
You know, that week you hunted there, you seen a bunch of younger deer.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah.
That big one might have been down in here, sticking to this cover, hitting this scrape.
And right back there is where I had a camera and I was getting bucks coming. I never got that buck, but I got a bunch of other bucks that were look like they're bedding in this bottom side here and coming out through and working their way through here.
Yeah, maybe down a little bit lower is where you need to be as it gets later in the year, because he needs that cover, security cover.
Yeah.
Maybe get your, that looks pretty dense. I don't know if we can get your wind to blow in that and kind of watch up toward your existing scrape somehow.
Yeah.
Maybe get right, let's
Like
go
back.
right over here.
Let me mark this scrape. This is a good one. Looks like maybe some doe beds.
Where's that other scrape? Right up here, Beau?
Yeah, it's just right there.
I mean, you might be able to get right here by this hemlock. I don't know if your wind can
Maybe
blow.
this beech right in front of that hemlock. See that bigger, is that a beech or no, what is that? Birch. They'll never see up there.
Yeah.
And you have your wind blowing into there, because look, now you have this. If they're running down this edge, you're not catching them as far as wind blowing. You can shoot out into the edge of this opening, and you can also shoot to this cross trail right where the blowdown comes out is right here where they have to cross.
Yeah, I think this is your better. I would rather hunt, like you said, when you get into the end of October, I'd rather be in this cover than be in that open, that scrapes in such an open area. It'd be a good early season, but I think you want to back down in here. If I'm pointing here west, you know, west wind's putting me right in there, southwest. And I feel like your movement's going to be more up in here.
Yeah, as more of a rut type. Mark this tree.
You can kind of see a bunch of smaller trees on the app. Which are those? But I definitely, we're about 30 yards from that one scrape. Right here's that deadfall he's going to funnel around, right?
Yep, right there. Come right across the top, 15-yard shot.
Might want to back up just a little bit, Beau, just to ensure your wind's kind of staying in here. I mean, you don't exactly know where he's coming, but this is definitely, even on the app, you can see this is that scrape that we stood at is the lowest point.
Yeah.
So, I mean, when thermals fall in the evening, he can stand here and smell what's at that scrape. So he might be working this. He got the cover. That scrape's out in the open.
Yeah.
Maybe a good early season, but later he can stand in here, and with the thermals falling down in the evening, he don't have to go to that scrape. Look at the rubs here. This rubs here, he's heading down this drain. I bet you another 100 yards down from that spot, you'll probably find another good spot. You know what I mean? Because you got that open area behind that stand. And if we find a next little thick area.
Little trail through here.
when you get into these flat areas, you don't know exactly, you can't pin, you just gotta hunt because you don't know exactly where, when they move all through this area like this, you can't really determine exactly where he is to watch your wind at all
right
times.
here.
Yeah.
Hair in it.
Right behind his blowdown.
Right where the wind's blowing.
Yeah. I would definitely hunt there though.
Yeah. And the thing is, like, again,
And you
we're
could just see
talking
the
about the
topo,
time.
the topo lines. We're
Yep.
back up, we come up the hill 5, 10 feet elevation. They're gonna go to that. It might be more up here, but.
Well, and the thing is, like, when you're, that's where it's super important what we were talking about earlier, the time of year that you're looking at it.
Yeah.
I don't think that would be a good early season spot, thinking that there could be a buck that lays here at some point, or a buck that lays back here and your wind coming over. It's probably not your best method unless you were trying to, you know, hunt them first thing in the morning, catch them back to bed. I have never really had a ton of good luck with doing that. But, you know, during the rut time frame, you're gonna have to give some things up when you're in a good area of funnels that are going through it, and there's going to be some risk involved. Like, to me, I want to be in that spot even if I don't have the optimal wind, versus not hunting it and being out of the game.
Yeah, it's definitely a good spot. They're gonna.
I do like this little bed here.
They're definitely gonna smell what's up in that, what's feeding up in that that cut. You know, we got a little trail here crossing, so we know they're crossing from here.
Yeah.
This next 20 yards, right? I mean, you don't have to be
Yeah,
high.
big scrape right here.
Yeah, look, you got a scrape. Maybe you would hunt maybe this beach here. I mean, you got trails crossing here, you got a scrape here. Maybe you can get in this beach and maybe you can get a shot. I don't know how far is that next pin there. Maybe you can get a lane to shoot to that trail. Maybe you can get in this low spot and watch your downwind side and then watch. And then, you know, a buck might walk right up this low spot with everything in his favor.
Yeah, 50 yards to that other tree. I don't think you're going to get a shot to that crossing there, but I mean, you're going to have to give up something.
Yeah. Yeah, you got two areas 80 yards apart that are two really good areas.
You know, or it's like one of those things that, you know, you had mentioned before when we were at the scouting camp of maybe if you're coming from this way, you start hunting lower.
Yeah, that's what I was gonna say.
And then the next time you hunt, you go up to the next tree.
Like if you don't know, I would start down here so you don't ruin, go up here and ruin everything below you. Start low, maybe have your camera running up there to have some inventory of what these deer are doing, you know.
But I want to reiterate, you know, as we've been, you know, talking back and forth and kind of working the situation out in our own heads, is what Johnny's talking about with this, like these ditches and the thermal pull there, and the last, you know, couple hours of daylight. Like right now, you're not really having that situation. There's not really a thermal pull. But when you get that last, like, calm right before dark, things just kind of settle here and start to slowly flow down. That's what he's talking about in the last few hours of daylight, working your way in and hunting it in that sort of scenario versus, you know, hunting different times of the day.
It's a little bit of a crapshoot. You don't know exactly where.
Yeah.
Maybe he wants to get up to that edge, right? But maybe you don't know where he's bedding. Maybe he's over here and he just wants to come below and look at that scrape that you've been hunting up in that open area. Or maybe he's like, man, I just want to go all the way down here. Maybe there's some hunting. I want to stick to this cover and just smell everything up there. But the lower he is, the better when the evening comes. But I think anywhere in through here, definitely a good spot.
Well, let's walk down to the bottom of this where this drain kind of comes down here, and we'll just look at that. Yeah, because this is a scrape. I mean, this is where they're heading out and then going back in.
And this is your camera was there.
Yeah, it was on that broken
Facing
tree.
right to us.
Yep. They were coming down this trail for the most part. So, you know, well, that's a giant rub root back there.
everything's falling down toward, this is the lowest point.
So initially when I was in here and not having information, I picked a tree right there.
Yeah.
It was right back in there, which still could be good, but more I'm seeing this trail being used, I'm almost thinking you want to be down on this side and hunting more of an east wind if you're down in this area. As it's blowing out, I could see them bedding on this edge of the cut with the wind blowing at their back, and then sneaking out here right before dark to come up and scent check that scrape.
And if you, I'm looking at an evening hunt for sure. I mean,
Yeah.
if you're in this area and you got your west wind, it's blowing all back into where the deer are coming from. You know what I mean, Beau?
Yep. You know, almost if you could get somewhere here, you're blowing kind of into this open spot and catching them wrapping around the bottom side of this.
But I'm thinking only thermal pool.
Yeah, yeah, not,
I mean, this
not
might
thinking
be
about wind.
This might be a 2-hour hunt every evening. It'd be a long hike in, but if you hunted here 2 hours if you just come in here 2 hours an evening for, you know, end of October and the beginning of November, Beau, if you focused on here 2 hours and you had that good calm thermal pool, because you know during the day they're working off of a west wind, which they're going in here, like you said, this is downwind, the swamp, and they're probably bedding, and that's where he's at during the day. And then he's coming, so he pretty much smelled this area all day, but then the thermal switch, he's gonna come out, check, he wants to check that,
Yeah.
them cuts up here. So if you didn't hunt anywhere else, but besides down in here, a few evenings with a calm thermal pool, come up from down low and got in a tree right, that's all you would need. But it would be that case that it would be just 2 hours.
Yeah.
That's all you could hunt here.
So like, and here's something that I think is interesting. Like when I look at this, I like this tree right here that's tucked in, but what I don't like about it, cherry. That's gonna be so loud to try to sneak in close for a couple hours sit. Anybody that's hunted in a cherry tree or anything with shaggy bark like that knows you cannot be quiet. You know, I'll hunt cherries if I have to, but it's more of an all day sit kind of rut funnel place. But I don't like being in cherries. That beach back there though,
Yeah.
could be a decent spot, you know, to try to slip back in.
And I could feel, I did see some ribs. We had a southwest wind which is blowing.
Yep.
Everything's going, and that's where all them deer came from.
Yep.
And they're working this drain. Rut is a different story, but you know, like he could be running anywhere. You could get in here and him not be bedded, but you know, end up mid late October.
You know,
and a couple evenings.
And recapping that, like the spot a little bit up higher, more of a rut type spot. We're thinking about wind. You know, you could hunt it basically all day. We're down in here now. We're talking about earlier season, last few hours. That's it. And
Earlier
totally
season,
agree.
not early season. Thinking like scrape. You know, more daytime bedding, nighttime checking scrapes.
Yep. Start getting in that
evening.
middle of October time
Yeah,
frame.
mid-October.
What I just marked in my app here was I marked the climbing tree. I took a photo of it. I noted how many sticks, what direction to face. I noted last 2 hours, middle of October, and because of the thermal pool, because we're talking about it here, but when you cover 30 different spots, it's hard to remember all those details. I mark all that stuff in there. So as I'm making my hunt plan for the year, I'm going in like, oh, what am I doing middle of October? Okay, there's that spot that I have that I could go into and set up and be able to hunt. And maybe this area isn't my #1 spot this coming year. So why not throw a sit at it, you know, and just even in somewhat less than ideal conditions, might be hot that day.
Yeah.
Just come in just before the evening, come in and climb up and try it. And finding this tree right here, you know, makes this whole trip worth it.
Yeah.
Sometimes you just find that one nugget that you're looking for in that information. Like one thing that I wanted to do with this series, and I want to do more of it, but like especially with you and my dad, is it's easy for us to go on a map and be like, oh, you know, bucks are going to bet on the points, so they're going to do this, but that doesn't, everyone's situation is so much different. Every area is so different. And like, so that's what I wanted to show, like our thought processes of going through and how you're breaking things down. When this is not an area that's very, you know, it doesn't fall in any rules really. You know, there's not a destination food source. There's not a prime bedding area per se. It's trying to lay it out and use, past experiences on what deer like to travel through, using my past hunting experience and trail camera data to draw conclusions and try to make a plan.
Yeah, it was a good trip, but I think you can really have success.
Thanks everyone for watching this. I really appreciate it. If you like the channel, please go ahead and subscribe to it and listen to the podcast. We may even do a little recap of what we found here on the podcast. Ton of good information out there, but just get out there and scout, get after it, and really start to learn your spots, because the only way you can find success and have those gut feelings is by getting out there and learning it.